What's up, guys? Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the medical industry and what I believe is pretty much amounts to being a scam. And I don't want to say that none of the practices or um, therapies that you can go through will help you at all, but they will not solve your problem. It takes more of a personal effort and it takes committing to your own well-being in order for these things to work. And I'm just going to start out by telling you a little bit about my experience with the medical mental health industry. And it started out, well, I mean, I've been in counseling and things like that since I was a very young child. Um, I was I wasn't a bad kid. I was pretty well behaved, but I did deal with a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety as a child. And you know, as I got older, I started experimenting with drugs and really kind of finding what I thought was my solution to my depression and my anxiety. And it was the first time I ever tried an opiate. It was like, I don't know. A lot of times in like AA meetings and stuff, people will talk about the first time they ever had a drink, and it was like falling in love or something like that. I wouldn't say it was like falling in love, but I would say it was like falling out of existence. And that's really what I wanted as a kid and as a young adult. I just didn't want to have to feel anything. I didn't want to have to exist. I didn't want to have to put forward any effort. I just wanted instantaneous satisfaction, and I just wanted to feel good with myself. So, when I was 21 years old, uh, my high school sweetheart, who I had been living with and who I loved a lot, ended up leaving me with one of our friends, not really my friend, more of her friend, and moving to Florida out of nowhere. And this just really it fucked me up for a while, um, because I felt so betrayed and like no one will ever love me if I can't have my high school sweetheart. But I mean, that's just it's ridiculous, and it doesn't really hurt anymore, but it hurt me really badly back then. I was in a bad situation. I had to find a new place to live. She moved to Florida, but her name was the only one on the lease at the time, so I kind of got fucked out of my living arrangements, which is okay. I forgive her. We're friends now. We talk pretty regularly, and I love her. I love her very much. She's probably top three best friends that I have. And I forgive her. Everybody goes through hard times. She had just lost her mother. She was going through some addiction stuff herself. And people make mistakes. And she's apologized to me. I've accepted her apology. I've apologized to her for, pushing her away. And she's accepted my apology. So that's a good thing. And but when I was 21, that happened. And it really messed me up. I didn't have anywhere to live, so I moved back in with my parents. And I was using a lot of Xanax at the time and some opiates. And I would get noticeably fucked up at night. And my my stepfather at the time was really unhappy about having me in his house using drugs. I mean, everybody was. My mom was. I'm sure my brothers were somewhat disturbed by it, but I think mainly it was the stepdad who pushed me out of that house. And that's fine. I mean, I don't expect to be enabled. But I ended up in my first detox slash psych ward, and it was a very. I gained a lot of insight into a lot of different people's struggles, and I kind of learned more about what it's like to be unhappy, and I thought I couldn't have learned any more, but I learned a lot. I mean, and I learned about how I didn't get the full picture quite yet. I'm sure I'm still don't have the full entire picture, but I will not cooperate with the mental health industry. I mean, the doctors are basically throwing darts at a cardboard box trying to figure out what medicine is going to work for you because they don't know. They don't know how your brain chemistry is. There's no way of really measuring your brain chemistry. They just have to kind of give you pills that help with the symptoms you have and hope that it works for you. And I never had any success with any pills that I've ever taken. And I've been prescribed them since I was maybe 12 years old. Started out with like Zoloft and your average like fluoride drugs, and I ended up on Seroquel and like heavy duty antipsychotic drugs. And I'm not I'm not a I wouldn't say I'm normal by any means. I would say that I'm probably sane. Like I have a good understanding of like my surroundings and myself. I'm a pretty sane person. And I think that it's ridiculous that, I've been prescribed as being bipolar, having PTSD, as being a manic depressive, of, you know, just countless things. Having anxiety disorder, uh, chronic depression, just things that a pill doesn't really help. I mean, it's not something that you should rely on anyway. And that's my biggest beef with the mental health industry is they sell pills as solutions to problems when they might just be like a small band-aid. Like, you know what I'm saying? A steri strip of of the potential for their helping you. It's not a lot. I mean, it can kind of soften the blow of reality, but that's not really most of the time what I think people need. People need to face reality, be comfortable in their truths. They need to, if you can be comfortable in your own skin, no matter where you are, uh, you're far less likely to be depressed. Period. Uh, but I mean, yeah, the mental health industry is a revolving door industry. They keep you coming back because it's how they make money. I mean, rehabs especially are bad about this. They just kind of bring you in for 28 days, give you some decent food sometimes, depending on where you are. I've been to 3 different rehabs, but most of the time the food is okay because they're charging you a lot of money, and they realize that food is often a big replacement for addicts and alcoholics. It's a replacement for the drugs or the alcohol. And they give you some limited therapy and counseling, and they have like mock group therapy meetings, mock AA meetings, mock NA meetings, where it's just the people in your facility, like the patients and a few of the counselors, and you have like a little AA meeting or an NA meeting. Um, but it's kind of forced, and it's not especially uplifting, or it just doesn't feel convincing. People don't feel, at least people that I've talked to and that I've lived with for 30 days, when I'm talking to these people about the AA meetings that they have in rehab, they are very different, but they are also, it's the same thing, you know what I'm saying? It's the same thing just with brand new addicts. And a lot of times the talk in those meetings is very unhealthy, and it can keep people uh, in that cycle of addiction. I think those meetings can, and they don't really stop that. kind of behavior in rehabs because they want people to come back. And I've had rehab counselors say, "I'll see you in 6 months," when I was getting out. You know what I mean? And as sad as it is, like they were not wrong because I came back 2 more times. I've been to rehab 3 times. Well, I've been to rehab 4 times. I've been to 3 different rehabs. I went to the one place twice. But they just don't care. It's about making money. And I think anytime that you have an industry that's claiming to help you to become a happier, healthier person for this much money, they probably just want the money. They don't really care about making you a happier, healthier person. And that's just the way life is. You know what I'm saying? It's not really. I'm not trying to condemn rehab because sometimes it really does help to be able to get out of your situation and to get be supervised and not have access to drugs. Sometimes that really does help, but you have to be in the mindset that you don't want to do the drugs anymore, or as soon as you get out, you're just gonna be itching to get drugs. And I, I I don't feel like anytime that I ever went to rehab, it was really the rehab that helped me. Like the last time that I went to rehab, I had just overdosed and I was in a coma for a few days in the hospital, and I woke up and my parents were in the room, and my dad was visibly upset, and I'd never seen my father really show that type of concern or emotion about me. I mean, I know my dad loves me. He's told me that he loves me, and like we hug and stuff. But I'd never really gotten the feeling that my dad would really not be able to go on unless I was still here or whatever. And when I saw that in my father, it made me want to stop doing drugs. It made me want to try to live and see if I could make this work. You know what I mean? I'm the only family that my father has left. Everyone else on my dad's side of the family has passed away. So it would be, I'm sure, extremely hard for my father if I passed. And so that was great incentive for me to try to make my life better. Try to get out of this despair that I was constantly feeling. And that's constantly being pushed at you, you know? If you watch the news, it's basically meant to make you live in fear and despair and to uh, basically, sell you antidepressants. Like, watch CNN. Every advertisement is for like Cymbalta or, Abilify. It's all, it's just really sad. And I mean, it's sad because if you really take a look at it and an objective look at your surroundings, at society, it's basically conditioning you for uh, a life of addiction and depression. I mean, that's pretty much that's if you can watch CNN and Fox News and all that shit nonstop all day and not be a depressed like sack of shit, you're probably a psychopath. Period. I mean, it's just it sucks and it's sad, but that is what it is. Like if you can't empathize with people that you see on the news that they're telling you, you know what I'm saying? That probably makes you a psychopath. And I don't think you can really help psychopaths. I'm not going to get off on this tangent, but I don't think that that's really something that we have any knowledge about that or a solution for. I mean, I don't want to say that because I think there's a solution for anyone who is willing to work for a solution. You just have to have the mentality that you want something. If you really truly want to be a better person and to live a good life, most of the time you'll be a good person and live a good life, you know? I think that people are products of their surroundings, products of circumstance. But I don't think that anyone is without hope. I think everyone has the potential to make their lives better. And a lot of people might be asking, well, how am I supposed to make my life better if I can't use these traditional um, forms of therapy? And which you can, you totally can. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying they never work for me, and they don't work for a lot of people that I've talked to. Like talk therapy is psychiatrists, I mean, and psychologists, but psychologists mainly. When you're talking to them, they're trained to mirror what you're saying back to you in a form of question. And I mean, that's really what a lot of them do. Like all of what a lot of them do. They don't really help you, they don't offer you solutions. They offer you your own thoughts, phrased as a question. And it's aggravating. I've lost my temper several times with therapists over this because I don't think people go to therapists to just talk and hear their own voices. I think when people are desperate enough to ask for help and reach out to one of these industries, and all they get is their own thoughts in the form of a question that's it's very well, you're a dissatisfied customer, first of all, and it kind of makes you feel hopeless, like you don't have an outlet for this struggle that you're dealing with, no matter what mental illness you may be dealing with. And I realize that, some mental illnesses may require drugs. If you're schizophrenic or something like that, maybe antipsychotics, if they work for you, I think that's great. But I think that the most important thing to be able to do, is to discern truth and know what works for you. And if you're going to a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or if you're going to some type of experimental therapy and it just feels like it's not working for you, it's lame, I just don't think you should waste much time or money on that, because it could be 5 years later and you'll be feeling the same way. Most times. And that's just what I've noticed in my friends and myself over the years as I've had to deal with these industries, because the only reason I stuck with it for so long is because my family was so adamant that I needed help, and I did need help, but I didn't need help from a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I needed to help myself first of all, and I needed to reach out to the people that I loved and the people around me to feel accepted and like I had a place, and all these things that make people feel good about themselves. You know, I feel kind of lame even talking about this, but like it's true. I think when you reach out to people and all you get is and you don't get solutions from people, you feel hopeless. When you really need help and you can't get it from an AA meeting or whatever. I've done lots of videos on AA and NA and Celebrate Recovery and 12-step programs. But I want to talk more so about like therapy, because I've done probably more therapy than I have the 12-step stuff. And it just never has really done anything for me. I actually wrote some notes for this video just so I wouldn't forget anything. I never write anything down for these things. I just kind of wing it. Uh, yeah, if you, I would say if you want some type of therapy, reach out, go to like a DRA meeting. That's Dual Recovery Anonymous, which means that you have some type of mental illness or an addiction or both. or you could go to a depression support group. Those things are available in pretty much every city, and they do have some success. I would say that if you are not willing to recognize a higher power, the 12 steps can be much harder for you. Earlier on in my sobriety, I was a godless heathen, and I was super convinced by atheism and science. But the longer the longer that I was on my own and um, trying to deal with 12 steps and all these things, it just became blatantly aware to me that there was a creator, there is a higher power. You know what I'm saying? When you try to ignore something so much, after a while, it just like gets up close in your face and you can't avoid it. So yeah, I think and I know I'll probably get some shitty comments for this, but I think a lot of mental illness issues can be avoided by just having a moral code and having Jesus in your life. I mean, that it worked for me. Nothing has helped me more than finding Jesus Christ, because Jesus offers everything that I wanted as a depressed addict, but even better because I'm not in that bad situation. All I wanted to do for the first 20 years of my life is die. And that's what Jesus calls us to do. He calls us to die and be reborn. And I feel like that's exactly what's happened to me. Like I have put a part of myself away in a grave. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm a completely different person than I was. And I've been reborn in the same image, but I've been given a second chance to do right by myself and by Jesus and God. And I think a lot of times um, people get turned off by uh, bringing Christianity into this conversation. But I think that I would be dishonest if I didn't tell you what happened to me and what has worked for me. And it really has. But there are several different uh, ideas or trains of ideas that are based in forgiveness and in avoiding resentment and love. Love is the most important thing. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to say that the way that I think is the only way to think, or else you're going to be unhappy, miserable, uh, heroin addict for the rest of your life, because that would be inaccurate. That would just be ridiculous. I don't think there's any one way to fix a problem. There's 10 ways to fix every problem. But I do think that the most effective way for a lot of young Americans is Christianity, because it's our culture and it has it's familiar. Uh, but yeah, I think that absolute honesty and acceptance of yourself is the best means to happiness. If you can be absolutely honest about your state of being and your life, be absolutely honest about your struggles and how you came to be the person you are, and you can accept them, accept that honesty, then you're probably going to be happy. And it's hard to do, but it gets easier as you face yourself. It gets easier as you deal with your issues. You become more familiar with yourself. A lot of times, I think people are just out of touch with their own essence, their own being, their own ghost inside. You know what I'm saying? People get out of touch with themselves. And I just, I offer advice and my help to those people. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to hit me up in the comments. I love everybody. As I always say in these videos, I love everyone. Uh, everyone is worthy of love. Everyone is worthy of acceptance and of Christ. Everybody is worthy of that. No one is left out. You just have to accept it. Alright, guys. Love you. Peace.